Welcome back, everybody. Stoner Jesus Show Live, podcast number 91. Doing a lot of silliest tonight, as you just heard. But it's time, when we get into the serious issues of the day, and we take these little political segments and we put them up on our YouTube channel, it is time for Pothead Punditry.
Our nation stands on the brink. Every day brings new federal encroachments that take our freedoms and strangle our will. There comes a time when the silliness must take a back seat to the serious issues of the day. The time is now. It's time to fight back and reclaim the freedom that is rightfully ours. It is time to discuss the serious issues of the day with Stoner Jesus' Pothead Punditry.
That's right. It's time for the serious issues of the day with Pothead Punditry. This is Pothead Punditry episode 16. Tonight we're talking about 50 economic numbers that are crazy but true, the rise of the police state in America, and I'll play you a clip of Lou Rockwell talking about Ron Paul, who last I checked is about $3.6 million raised since his money bomb yesterday. Big primaries coming up. We here at the Stoner Jesus Show support Ron Paul, and we support his winning of the Republican nomination and being the next president of the United States. So that would be awesome. 50 economic numbers from 2011 that are almost too crazy to believe. This is from the economiccollapseblog.com. The article says, even though most Americans have become very frustrated with this economy, the reality is that the vast majority of them still have no idea just how bad our economic decline has been or how much trouble we're going to be in if we don't make dramatic changes immediately. If we do not educate the American people about how deathly ill the U.S. economy has become, then they will just keep falling for the same old lies that our politicians keep telling them. Just tweaking things here and there is not going to fix this economy. We truly do need a fundamental change and direction. America is consuming far more wealth than it is producing, and our debt is absolutely exploding. If we stay on this current path, an economic collapse is inevitable. Hopefully these crazy economic numbers from 2011 that the author of this article has included in this will be shocking enough to wake some people up. The following are 50 economic numbers from 2011 that are almost too crazy to believe. Number one, a staggering 48% of all Americans are either considered to be low income or are living in poverty. Number two, approximately 57% of all children in the United States are living in homes that are considered to be low income or impoverished. Number three, if the number of Americans that wanted jobs was the same today as it was back in 2007, the official employment rate put out by the U.S. government would be up to 11%. Number four, the average amount of time that a worker stays unemployed in the United States is now over 40 weeks. Number five, one recent survey found that 77% of all U.S. small businesses do not plan to hire any more workers. Number six, there are fewer payroll jobs in the United States today than there were back in 2000, even though we have added 30 million extra people to the population since then. Number seven, since December 2007, median household income in the United States has declined by a total of 6.8% once you account for inflation. Number eight, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 16.66 million Americans were self-employed back in 2006. Today that number has shrunk to 14.5 million. Number nine, a Gallup poll from earlier this year found that approximately 1 out of every 5 Americans that do have a job consider themselves to be underemployed. According to author Paul Osterman, about 20% of all U.S. adults are currently working jobs that pay poverty-level wages. Number 11, back in 1980, less than 30% of all jobs in the United States were low-income jobs. Today, more than 40% of all jobs in the U.S. are low-income jobs. Back in 1969, 95% of all men between the ages of 25 and 54 had a job. In July, only 81.2% of men in that age group had a job. Number 13, One recent survey found that 1 out of every 3 Americans would not be able to make a mortgage or rent payment next month if they suddenly lost their current job. Number 14, the Federal Reserve recently announced that the total net worth of U.S. households declined by 4.1% in the third quarter of 2011 alone. Number 15, according to a recent study conducted by the BlackRock Investment Institute, the ratio of household debt to personal income in the United States is now 154%. Number 16, as the economy has slowed down, so has the number of marriages. According to a Pew Research analysis, only 51% of all Americans that are at least 18 years old are currently married. Back in 1960, 72% of all U.S. adults were married. Number 17, the U.S. Postal Service alone has lost more than $5 billion over the past year. Number 18, in Stockton, California, home prices have declined 64% from where they were when the housing market peaked. Number 19, Nevada has had the highest foreclosure rate in the nation for 59 months in a row. Number 20, if you can believe it, the median price of a home in Detroit is now just $6,000. And that's just 20 of the 50. I don't know if I'm going to go through the whole 50, but we'll see how things go. We'll go with a few more, and then we'll move on to Lou Rockwell and Ron Paul, and then the rise of the police state in America. Number 21. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 18% of all homes in the state of Florida are sitting vacant. The figure is 63% larger than it was just 10 years ago. Number 22. New home construction in the United States is on pace to set a brand new all-time record low in 2011. 19% of all American men between the ages of 25 and 34 are now living with their parents. Number 24, electricity bills in the United States have risen faster than the overall rate of inflation for 5 years in a row. Let's go down here. Number 26, one study found that approximately 41% of all working-age Americans either have medical bill problems or are currently paying off medical debt. Number 27, if you can believe it, 1 out of every 7 Americans has at least 10 credit cards. Number 28, the United States spends about $4 on goods and services every year, services from China, for every $1 that China spends on goods and services from the United States. Let's see. Today, one out of every 6 elderly Americans lives below the federal poverty line. Number 32, according to a study that was just released, CEO pay at America's biggest companies rose by 36.5% in just one recent 12-month period. Today, the too big to fail banks are larger than ever. The total assets of the 6 largest U.S. banks increased by 39% between September 30th, 2006 and September 30th, 2011. The 6 heirs of Walmart founder Sam Walton have a net worth that is roughly equal to the bottom 30% of all Americans combined. According to analysis of the Census Bureau, data done by the Pew Research Center, the median net worth of households led by someone 65 years of age or older is 47 times greater than the median net worth for households led by someone under the age of 35. A higher percentage of Americans is living in extreme poverty, 6.7%, than has ever been measured before. Child homelessness in the United States is now 33% higher than it was back in 2007. Since 2007, the number of children living in poverty in the state of California has increased by 30%. Today, 1 out of every 7 Americans is on food stamps, and 1 out of every 4 American children is on food stamps. A staggering 48.5% of all Americans live in a household that receives some form of government benefits. Back in 1983, that number was below 30%. If Bill Gates gave every single penny of his fortune to the U.S. government, it would only cover the U.S. budget deficit for about 15 days. Amazingly, the U.S. government has now accumulated a total debt of $15 trillion. When Barack Obama first took office, the national debt was $10.6 trillion. If the federal government began right at this moment to repay the U.S. national debt at a rate of $1 per second, it would take over 440,000 years to pay off the national debt. The U.S. national debt has been increasing by an average of more than $4 billion per day since the beginning of the Obama administration. During the Obama administration, the U.S. government has accumulated more debt than it did from the time that George Washington took office to the time that Bill Clinton took office.
Oh my God.
Incredible numbers that you might not believe were true, but they are. We have coming up Rise of the Beast System, 11 ways that America is becoming more like North Korea. But first, what I want to play, I'll go back to the thing here. Let's see what's going on in the chat room. Matthew Broda has joined us in the chat room. He says, I have 0 credit cards and I don't believe in the banking system. It's probably good. They're going to steal your money. That's the whole fucking point. They want to steal your money. They're going to steal your money. That's what they do. But this is coming up. 11 ways America is becoming more like North Korea. We'll talk about that after a little break here. This is Lou Rockwell on the rise of Ron Paul. Check this out. We'll return with Pothead Punditry, episode number 16, after this.
The question is, can Congressman Paul survive the attacks now that it's apparently his turn to receive them? Joining us now, a man who has worked with Congressman Paul for decades, good friend of the show, Lou Rockwell, chair of the Mises Institute in Auburn, Alabama. Lou, it's a pleasure. Welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Judge, great to be with you.
Given that
Especially
there's
today.
big government, thank you, Lou. Given that big government seems everywhere these days, every aspect of our lives regulated by the federal government, how do you explain the rise of Ron Paul?
Well, I think it's precisely that. It's actually two things. First of all, the economic crisis. This is what's changed from 4 years ago when, of course, Ron said there was going to be a crisis and everybody laughed at him, but of course he was correct. So after 4 years of economic terror, we're all afraid for ourselves, for our parents, for our children. We're worried about the future. We know that we know about crony capitalism on Wall Street. We know about Goldman Sachs and Citibank and Bank of America and all the big J.P. Morgan, all the big guys living at the trough at the expense of the average person. People are angry about that, as well they should be. Also, and it took them long enough, but today they realize we're living in a police state. I mean, not only is the government running a police state, in fact, all around the world for many, many countries, but they're running one here at home, and there's nothing that's beyond them. The great John T. Flynn defined totalitarianism in terms of a government as a government that felt it could do anything. There was nothing beyond it. It might not do everything, but if it decided to do anything, it could do it. So this is the government that, for example, can order us not to use our cell phones in our cars. People are sick of it. They're angry about it. They want to change.
Right. It certainly seems to be getting that way. How do you read the Republican establishment, Lou? I mean, what would the Republican establishment do, for example, if Ron Paul wins the Iowa caucuses, and right now he's in a tie for first, that's just 3 weeks out, and then wins or finishes a close second or even a tight third in New Hampshire? What will those establishment, big government Republicans that run the party do?
Well, first of all, of course, they're terrified of him. But I think they're not going to be quite as vicious as the media will be because they're afraid he might run as a third-party candidate or as an independent. So they're actually not wanting to drive him out of the party. So I predict they will not be quite as nasty, but they'll use surrogates in the media and otherwise to go after him. And as you said, the knives will be out.
How do you explain something like Bob Barr, who was one of the prosecutors of Bill Clinton in the impeachment saga, who was the Libertarian nominee for president in 2008, who calls himself a staunch Libertarian, endorsing Newt Gingrich, of all people?
Well, I guess he wants to have a future in Georgia politics. I don't know. I must say he's always had an animus for Ron Paul. And so I guess that must be part of it. Bob Barr is good in some civil liberties areas. Some people would question whether he really is a libertarian in other matters. But I think it's just a matter of judging his own future, and he wants to be getting good with the Republican establishment in Georgia. They all endorse Gingrich, which it seems to me all you need to know about the Republican establishment in Georgia, that they would be for this neocon warmongering crookster from D.C.
All right. Lou Rockwell giving us the inside scoop from the Ron Paul view. Lou, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Judge.
Welcome back, everybody. Stoner Jesus Show Live, podcast number 91 for stonerjesus.net. That was Lou Rockwell talking about Ron Paul, and it's all very true. You know, fuck Bob Barr, fuck Newt Gingrich, that evil little fucking troll. Anyway, we got about 4.5 minutes until the speaker break, so we'll go ahead and talk about 11 ways that America is becoming more like North Korea. We'll go through a couple of these until the speaker break, and then we'll play some more stuff going out of the show. Number one, it has been revealed that Predator drones are now being used inside the United States to spy on American citizens. Predator drones can sit up in the sky and watch you for 20 hours without stopping. If one was watching you right now, you probably wouldn't even know it. They are equipped with the latest high-resolution cameras, very sophisticated heat sensors, and incredibly advanced surveillance equipment. Number two, the Department of Homeland Security says that paying for your hotel room in cash is a sign that you could be a potential terrorist. If you do not believe this, there is a link on Infowars.com to the YouTube video talking about it. Authorities in Tennessee are now going door-to-door conducting assessments of how prepared residents are. The following comes from a recent news article from newschannel5.com. The Metro Public Health and Tennessee Department of Health will be using a tool designed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to go door-to-door and check to see how disaster-ready you are. The door-to-door assessment will take place from 3:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. Thursday and 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Friday. It will be in 30 neighborhoods in Davidson County that have been randomly selected to be the target of a door-to-door assessment. And obviously, how are they going to assess how ready you are unless they inspect your house, maybe the inside of your house? Number four, today the government authorities track nearly everything that we do. For example, one woman in Washington, D.C. has been fined $2,000 for not properly recycling homemade cat litter made out of old newspapers and junk mail. And that story is from myfoxdc.com. Number five, just like in the movie Minority Report, face tracking technology, and this is from CNN Money, is now being used in advertising billboards all over the nation. This type of technology is also increasingly being used for law enforcement purposes. Number six, police are not just using tasers on hardened criminals anymore. Now tasers are even being used on young schoolgirls. The following comes from a report about an incident that recently happened in Pennsylvania. Now, this is from McCall.com. The mother of a 14-year-old Deer Roof High School student has filed a federal lawsuit claiming an Allentown police officer used excessive force when he shot her daughter in the groin with a stun gun during class dismissal in September. Victoria Geis says her daughter, Kashana Wilson, had her arms raised high to indicate she surrendered when Officer Jason Amari pointed a taser at her on September 29th outside the high school and fired, according to the lawsuit filed Wednesday in U.S. District Court by attorney Richard J. Orlowski. Number seven, a number of very elderly women have come forward with stories of being strip searched by TSA agents at U.S. airports. Not even North Korea treats their elderly women like this. Americans are being watched in hundreds of different ways each day, number 8 says, and most of them have no idea what is happening. For example, in Washington, D.C., the movements of every single car are tracked using automated license plate readers. The following comes from a recent Washington Post article. More than 250 cameras in the district and its suburbs scan license plates in real time, helping police pinpoint stolen cars and fleeing killers. But the program quietly has been expanded beyond what anyone had imagined a few years ago. With virtually no public debate, police agencies have begun storing the information from the cameras, building databases that document the travel of millions of vehicles. Number 9, the FBI is now admittedly recording internet talk radio programs all over the United States. The following comes from a recent article by Mark Weaver at WMAL.com. If you call a radio talk show and get on the air, you might be recorded by the FBI. The FBI has awarded a $524,000 contract to a Virginia company to record as much radio news and talk programming as it can find on the internet. Well, if you guys in Virginia are listening, fuck you. The FBI says it's not playing Big Brother by policing the airwaves, but rather seeking access to what airs as potential evidence. The rest of the story goes on in Infowars.com. It goes on and on and on. We're coming up on the Spreaker break.